For more on the escalating tensions in the Middle East, let's speak to Kian Tajbakhsh, professor of international relations at NYU and presidential fellow for the Committee on Global Thought at Columbia University. Professor, thank you for making the time to speak with us today. Let's start off by looking at the scale of Iran's retaliatory strikes so far. U.S. embassies hit, energy production facilities damaged, some civilian areas targeted. How significant have these attacks been, and could we expect it to get worse?
I think the scale of these attacks are telling and show a number of things. First of all, there is a strategic calculation by the Iranian regime that by attacking the partners of the United States in the region, they will raise the costs to the United States, put pressure on the United States via these Arab countries. That is to say, the regime wants the Arab countries to press President Trump to wind down operations as quickly as possible. That is their calculation. But I think it is misguided because the scope of the attacks has built up and bolstered the resolve of the Arab countries to coordinate their efforts against Iran. So I think, although the scope of the attacks might increase, I think that what you'll find is a much more coordinated response from the Arab countries.
What would this coordinated response look like? Could these Arab countries be drawn into the war?
Well, I think that we'll have to wait and see. I think they would be very reluctant to enter into the war directly, but I think that the initial action might be that some of the Arab countries will allow the United States to either use their bases to launch attacks against Iran or use their airspace in ways that they originally said that they would not allow. So I think we're already seeing signs of this kind of coordination and greater permission to the United States to use their bases to launch further military attacks.
Along with giving the U.S. access to their military bases, what else could the U.S. do to protect its allies in the Gulf? And do we know if they will?
I am certain that the United States has had contingency plans in place. This was the whole rationale of waiting for a number of weeks so that the two carrier strike groups that the United States has sent to the region arrives. The concentration of all the naval assets in the region were all intended primarily to protect its neighbors, its local partners in the region, in case Iran does actually launch these missile attacks against them, which they have. And so the United States will put all its assets in place. And I think one of the ways that the U.S. is going to do that is not necessarily through interceptors, which are very expensive, but to hit the Archer on the ground. That is to say, continue the operation to take out missile silos, launchers, and other inventories on the ground inside Iran. It is a race for time, but I think the United States has put assets in place so that they can achieve these goals as soon as possible.
Many governments are now scrambling to repatriate their nationals from the region. Does this signal that the conflict will get worse in the days and weeks to come?
I think it's fair to assume that there will be an escalation in the coming days. In fact, this morning, I think Speaker Johnson said that the hardest missile attacks or the biggest military operations that the U.S. wants to launch are yet to come. So we already have a claim that we should be waiting for larger attacks. And I think that this is part of the contingency planning that needs to take out a number of the assets that still remain inside Iran.
What's been the impact for people living in places like Dubai, Bahrain, Kuwait? How much of daily life has been disrupted by this conflict?
In fact, I spoke today to colleagues who are from Doha and from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. They reported that everyday life has not been disrupted tremendously. They are obviously concerned about future attacks, but so far there has not been reports of everyday life being disrupted too severely.
So mostly life is normal for those living there. When it comes to the oil trade and gas prices, Iran appears to have succeeded in shutting the Strait of Hormuz. Marine traffic in the waterway is said to be down to zero. Help us understand why this is so significant and what are the potential spillover effects on Asia and the rest of the world.
It is very significant because, as your viewers, I'm sure, know, something like 20% of the world's hydrocarbons flow through the Persian Gulf, particularly to Asian markets. The Iranians have claimed that they have closed down the Straits of Hormuz through mining operations, but it's true that it is de facto closed because shipping is avoiding the straits for now. But President Trump has declared that the United States may start escorting shipping through the Straits of Hormuz and also perhaps provide insurance for that shipping. But I think it's important to understand that this was obviously a goal of Iran to close the Straits of Hormuz. So this was anticipated by the American military, and the naval assets in the region, I'm sure, will be deployed through anti-mining ships and other kinds of assets to respond to this and open the straits as soon as possible. I think there will be short-term disruption, perhaps for the next several weeks, while there is the operations. But I think over the long term, the flow of shipping through the region will be opened up. Hopefully, when this operation is wrapped up and succeeded. It's not possible to determine when that will be, but I'm pretty certain they will be. And Asian markets, I think, will then return to normal. But there will be pain in the short term.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your insights with us. We were speaking to Kian Tajbakhsh, Professor of International Relations at NYU and Presidential Fellow for the Committee on Global Thought at Columbia University.